This is our third National Academy of Construction, Ask Me Anything. My name is Keith Molenaar. I'm a professor at the University of Colorado Boulder. The National Academy of Construction was established to recognize our industry leaders. An important purpose of the Academy is to provide a network linked to the past participants and the future participants in the construction industry. As such, we've developed this NAC AMA to help transfer knowledge to our new construction leaders. The format of our AMA is simple. Our speakers will make a short presentation about their career and their perspective on the industry. If you've not already, please do email your questions to nacama@colorado.edu. At the end of our hour here, one student will win a $500 scholarship from the National Academy of Construction. Our speaker today is Janice. She goes by Jan Tuchman. She is an editor-in-chief. She leads the editorial team for creating content of the Engineering News Record Enterprise, and that's online, in print, and in live events. She's active in many construction organizations and has developed a broad network of industry sponsors, many of whom keep ENR on the top of the latest trends and innovations in our construction industry. She's traveled the world to visit outstanding projects and speak to groups and at universities. We've been lucky enough to have her speak here at the University of Colorado Boulder. Jan serves on the Industry Leaders Council of the American Society of Civil Engineers and is a member of the National Academy of Construction. She's on the board for the nonprofit Bridges to Prosperity, which works to alleviate poverty caused by rural isolation by building pedestrian bridges across raging rivers. If you don't have a Bridges to Prosperity chapter at your university, please do look into it. It's a wonderful, wonderful program. This past April, she won the GD Crane Award for Distinguished Editorial Career, presented by Business Information Group called Connective. In 2014, she won both the Beavers Service and Supply Award for Outstanding Achievement in Heavy Engineering and Civil Construction, and also the Carol H. Dunn Award from the Construction Industry Institute for outstanding contributions to improving cost effectiveness in the United States construction industry. She earned her bachelor's and master's degrees in journalism here from the University of Colorado Boulder. So Jan, we're really pleased to have you here tonight. And after a short reflection here, we'll go ahead and start asking you questions. So the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here to talk to students. Love to talk to students. And so how did I get here? Keith, thank you, Keith, and for that introduction. And he said, he asked me to reflect on my career and the changes I've seen in the industry. So in terms of my career, I started out back in Akron, Ohio, where I grew up. My father was an architect, but my talent was writing. I came up with the idea of writing about architecture. And I thought I wanted to write for Architectural Record. I went to University of Colorado. I studied architecture and journalism. But when I applied to Architectural Record, they had no openings. They said, why don't you talk to the folks across the hall at ENR? And I knew that magazine too, because there were two magazines that my father read that were around my house growing up. One was Architectural Record, one was Engineering News Record. Over some time and some back and forth, I got a job at ENR, and I never looked back. I've been there for many, many years. So about ENR, we've had this name for about 100 years when a publisher named John Hill, who had a magazine named Engineering News, and another named James H. McGraw, who had a magazine named Engineering Record, decided to join forces and put their magazines together. And they made a magazine called Engineering News Record and a company called McGraw-Hill. We provide the news, data, and commentary to help construction professionals and aspiring construction professionals like you do their jobs more effectively. We provide that content, as Keith mentioned, in whatever way the audience wants it. Through print magazines, we have about 60,000 subscribers, 17 electronic newsletters, a 5-day-a-week email news alert, a website with 220,000 visitors a month, a series of 70 webinars this past year and growing, and a series of live events. People still like to get together and talk to each other in person. So the news on our website is free for 14 days. Then it goes behind a paywall where we also host our premium content, like our information about top-ranked firms. Maybe you've heard of the top 400 contractors, the top 500 design firms, the top 600, I have a few of these to show you. Top 600 specialty contractors, go out. And if you see an internship, for example, if you saw why would you be interested? If you saw an internship opportunity posted from Haywood Baker and you wanted to find out more about them, of course you go to their website. But another way to find out more about Haywood Baker is that you could see the kind of information in the top 600. I'm going to show you our breakout list. That Haywood Baker is the #1 contractor this year in excavation and foundation work. Our construction cost information is also premium content. And if you, for example, needed to know the price of rebar for your estimating class, you could find that on ENR.com. Rebar prices were up 8.9% from a year ago. Here's what the cost data pages look like. We got a ton. This is the print version, but all this information is on the website as well. And do we have a student rate for subscriptions? Yes, we do, my little commercial. You can sign up for a student rate, which is a real bargain, at www.enr.com/student. It costs less than $20 a year, 2 people going to the movies, for a digital-only subscription, which includes full access to all the premium content online. So it's really not very expensive. And of course, if you want to go the free way, there is 14 days of free news about all kinds of things. And also, you can subscribe free to many of our electronic newsletters, except the 2 that come with the paid subscription at www.enr.com/enews. So that's free. Now, on the question of the biggest changes that I have seen in the industry, it's been a long road. For me, what I think about is the intersection of construction technology and changes and construction industry changes and publishing industry changes. So, like we're there at the intersection, and everywhere the pace of technology change is accelerating. I was at, Keith mentioned the ASCE Industry Leaders Council. They were talking about, someone from, I think, Merrill Lynch coined the term tech-acceleration to just talk about how fast the technology is changing as we watch, as we speak. I started out writing stories on a typewriter. Imagine how they were designing buildings and bridges and power plants back then before CAD with T-squares and slide rules. It's pretty amazing what got built. Now teams collaborate across the globe. I just got back from a global construction conference that we helped organize in India. And one of the speakers there was the managing director for Bechtel India. And he described he works with 2,000 engineers in their India-based office near New Delhi. And from that base, they worked on industrial projects around the world, and the Riyadh Metro, for example. It's just, all kinds of collaboration tools are now available. And on site too, the process of inspecting a project, you're not like writing down notes and then going back and typing up notes and then filing them in paper and all of that. Now project managers are logging their inspection data on their iPads and clicking submit, and it goes right into the database. We see bridges and work sites inspected by drones, parts produced on site by 3D printing, artificial intelligence put to work to identify safety hazards, and a product hitting the market at Autodesk University this week that uses blockchain, vision, and machine learning to tell contractors the odds of winning their next bid. Another thing I wanted to talk about is productivity, very important. And there's a new measurement of productivity that just came out this year. It turns out that construction has been getting a bad rap on stagnant productivity based on looking at all sectors of the industry as being the same and applying constant factors to an industry that's really divided into different sections and doing different kinds of work. So the new study from the Bureau of Labor Statistics applies new price indexes to the question of productivity by sector and found that 3 out of the 4 sectors they studied had actually quite significant increases in their productivity. I think this is so important. I want to get it out every possible time I can because for years and years and years, people continue to go on saying there's no productivity increases in construction. Never rang true to me. It wasn't what I was seeing. And now that we've got some evidence, so I'm excited about that. I've also seen, of course, over the many years, all kinds of record-breaking projects. From the ones of the past, the Channel Tunnel, that was first conceived in 1802. It finally became a reality in 1994 after 6 years of construction to the Burj Khalifa, now the tallest building in the world at 2,717 feet. 2 recent amazing projects, like the emergency spillway repairs at the tallest dam in the United States, Oroville Dam. This was on the cover of ENR recently. To Manitoba Hydro's facility just south of the Arctic Circle, where the teams worked through winter temperatures that reached minus 40 degrees Celsius. There's that cover. And we could get into new forms of project delivery and new forms of project financing, but I don't know how many of you were on the webinar with Mike Loulakis, but he talked a lot about that, and he's the real expert there. And I don't want to do all the talking. I'll do some talking, but I want to talk to the questions that you have already submitted or are submitting. So let's turn to your questions. Keith?
Yeah, thank you, Jan. Great overview. And before I ask you questions, I do just want to put in one more plug for Engineering News Record. I know many of the questions have gone through how to be better in interviews, how to land your first job, how to get an internship. I guarantee if you spend a few minutes looking at the news and ENR each week, you will have a much better idea of what the trends are in the industry and will do much better in job interviews and just feel more a part of the industry when you look at it from that angle. So I would encourage you, everyone, to take a look at it as well. Jan, we have one question. You brought up the...
Uh-oh. Oh dear.
Thanks.
Water. I took one sip of water and it got me.
Backfired, yes. I know.
It's water, really.
One thing that you talked about is the rankings in Engineering News Record. And I know many students are interested. When I looked for my first job, I did exactly what you talked about. I looked through the different rankings and wanting to know as I was applying to companies where they were. Michael Trin asks, what is looked at when determining those rankings?
Oh, okay. So we have a very lengthy survey form, which asks all kinds of questions about the companies, revenue, their revenue by region, their global revenue, their percent of international work, their just a lot of information, all in the construction industry. Well, I just got a call from a reader who said, now when I research some of these companies, I find that I find different numbers than what you report. Now, first of all, what the numbers that we report are voluntarily provided by companies who are mainly often 90+% private companies who are divulging financial information for the purpose of being ranked on ENR's lists. And so this is coming from the company. It's self-reported. We do require that a CFO, a CEO, someone at the top of the company sign off personally attesting that this information is accurate. And believe me, if it's not, we hear about it they hear about it from the IRS, or we hear about it from their competitors who say, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. And then we go back to the company and, you know, there's a whole thing. And that has happened sometimes. But getting back to, so it's self-reported. Oh, about the question, what someone called and said they didn't find the same numbers when they looked at, say, Wikipedia entries. Well, that's because big companies can have interests that are not just construction. We're measuring a company's construction revenue. How much have they earned doing all kinds of different kinds of construction services, the whole ball game, but not anything that has to do with shipbuilding or development, or, you know, it's not real estate, it's not other kinds of earnings, it's just design, you know, planning, design, construction.
Thanks, Jen. And you really bring up a good point. So many construction companies in our industry are privately owned. You see many in someone's name or have been started by a single person. I have another question from Cody along with your role with ENR. So what are some everyday challenges you face as editor-in-chief of Engineering News Record?
I think the biggest challenge is that this is a really big industry, and even though as a professional magazine, business magazine, we have a pretty big staff as these type of magazines go. We have 20 editors, but to cover the entire construction industry, you know, our competitors are not, there's not another a magazine that really covers everything in the construction industry from soup to nuts. There are lots of vertical magazines that cover they have, like, you know, 5 people that just cover drilling, or just cover lots of magazines, you know, building, design, and construction just covers buildings. They do design and construction. There's other magazines that just cover design, or they just cover design build projects, like Design Build magazine. So there's lots of other people that cover a slice, and we're looking out over the whole thing. So how do we cover it all? One of my editors called up to me and she said, I just don't know what to do first. I'm feeling so pressured. There's these stories, and I'm doing a cover story, and I'm, you know, like helping my staff prioritize their time. And of course, we supplement our editor time with our freelancers, who, if you get familiar with the magazine, you'll recognize many of their names. They appear again and again. They're really a part of our team. But there, of course, we have a budget, we have a salary budget, we have a freelance budget. We have to, you know, keep everything in balance. We do the best, as many stories as we possibly can with the resource, and as well as we can with the time available and the resources available. So we have to be mindful of our budget and keep ENR financially healthy.
Thanks. That's a wonderful question. I'm going to move a little bit away from just ENR here. Evan Rothwell asks a good question for someone in your position here. What are some good ways to improve my verbal and written communication skills?
Ooh, I like that one. Practice, practice, practice. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. How do you learn to write a good story? Practice. How do you learn to make a good presentation? Practice. One of my publishers over the course of my career, it was James H. McGraw IV. So he was the grandson of the James H. McGraw who founded the company McGraw-Hill and put the two magazines together and everything. Grandson or great-great-grandson if he's the fourth. So, and he was excited to come back to be the publisher of this magazine. He'd worked at the company, he'd worked at many other publications in the company. And he was a dynamo on practice. We would get ready to do our Award of Excellence event, and we'd get the script all together, and then he'd want to run through. He'd do part of it, I do part of it, and he'd want to run through it every day. And I was like, by the time we'd go work for 2 or 3 weeks, and we're practice, and when we got up there in front of everybody, it was really good because we really practiced. So that's, in terms of verbal presentations, practice is important. And also writing is just a matter of doing it over and over. Of course, going to getting, you need some foundational things. You need your coursework. You need, if your school offers a writing center, especially if you feel like writing is a challenge, going to the writing center and working with the people there can really help. And there's books that can give you tips and lots of material online. I still love Strunk and White's, I started the story, Strunk and White, and Elements of Style. I thought I was going to forget the name. Elements of Style, in which he says, omit needless words. Omit needless words. Omit needless words 3 times because you're not going to say anything else. That's all you need to say. So that's my writing tip for the night is omit needless words. That's
great advice. You have to realize writing's iterative to do that as well. So it's rarely correct the first time. You have to be willing to go back and put the work in. So excellent. Allison Dries is asking a question, and the question of ethics has come up in a number of these. So she was asking, what ethical challenges have you faced, and how did you work through them?
Have I faced? Well, this is another question that just came up very recently, just today. One of the editors came in and said, someone called me about something someone called her about a story. And before she even called them back, she's worrying about what is it? Why did I report something wrong? Or, she's going to the heart of where she said something in the story that he told her on the record. The source told her on the record, and she printed, but she's feeling like perhaps the owner of the project didn't like to see that in print, and that he might be asking her to take something out of the web version of the story. I don't know, I don't even know what happened in the end, but this was like the ethical dilemma of the journalist. And I said, we've never wanted, it's not the heart of the story, and we've never wanted someone to lose their job because of a story in ENR. So in this case, and I don't even know if that's what the person was calling about, but this is the kind of things we worry about. That when people give you information, it can be, you want the reader to get as much information as possible to get value from the story, but you also want to be sensitive to the people who are enmeshed in whatever kind of dilemma we're writing about. So that's, there's a lot of sensitivities and ethical issues there when people are giving you on the record versus off the record information.
Sure.
And, we're trying to, our goal in writing about a lot of things is to help make sure if something bad happened, it's really bad if something bad happened, whether it's an accident, it's a collapse, it's a lawsuit, it's a a design flaw. It's a deep construction defect. But it's even worse if nobody knows what happens, so it happens again, and then again, and then again. And this is what happens if things just get litigated and covered up. And so, you know, this is where we feel like we can play a role in making sure that if there was a defect, for example, I reported early in my career on a problem of jumbo sections that were designed to be used only in load-bearing situations. In other words, vertical loads being used in trusses, and then they were in tension. So they were being used improperly. And there was more than one case. There was a case where one of these trusses snapped at the Orange County Civic Center. Fortunately, it happened on a cold snap in a Florida night. Nobody was in the building, nobody was hurt, but we felt it was so important to get at the bottom of why did this happen and what was the problem, so that it doesn't happen again and again. And it ended up in a code change in the steel AISC's construction manual, the whole situation.
Yeah, engineering news record has really had a big influence on the industry around those types of issues, safety, ethical issues. I want to ask one more question about engineering news record. Lynn Lee, she asks a question about what are the benefits of engineering publications such as ENR to current students or young professionals?
Well, as you mentioned, it's certainly very important for students to be knowledgeable about not just, you know, I know that you all get in the weeds about, you know, engineering structures and calculating loads and all of these things that you absolutely definitely need to know to do your jobs in the future. But you, at the same time, especially as you move into the job market, you need to know about the industry as a whole, about the dynamics of the industry, about who are the players, and what are the legislative issues and the government regulatory issues, and the, you know, things that are going to play a role in your future career. So publication, another great, you know, ASCE Civil Engineering magazine also has wonderful articles about projects told from the viewpoint of the players on the project, which you can get a lot of information, a lot of great case studies. You know, and we do these feature stories like I was showing you about, you know, the project up in the Arctic Circle. You can just, I mean, it's really kind of, some of these projects are so exciting. You could make a movie about this project or many others that either we write about or Civil Engineering writes about, or some of the other specialty magazines. I pick up a magazine about pile driving, and I go, wow, I really did that. It's amazing. It's interesting too, and you'll see, you'll be able to spark conversation when you go to that, you know, ASCE student chapter meeting, and you're talking, oh, I read about this project or your company, or, you know, you'll get this broad kind of knowledge, and also kind of get excited about your future career.
Thanks. Great answer. Let me ask you about, we've been talking a lot about big projects. Some smaller projects that students get involved in are Bridges to Prosperity projects. So Sarah McLean asks, what inspired you to work with Bridges to Prosperity? In other words, what about the organization caught your attention?
Oh, I met their CEO. She's the CEO, Avery Bang. She was ENR, one of the ENR's top 25 newsmakers 5, 6, 7 years ago. And it just seems like an organization that has done so much good, even, you know, at that point, and now it's done more since. I think what I'm very impressed with is that they've been gathering data about the bridges that they put in place and how it affects the communities, whether it be Nicaragua or Panama or Bolivia, or a lot of work now in Africa and Rwanda and Uganda. And so they've been demonstrating that the community and collecting data to find that the community that gets a bridge really prospers economically. The income can go up a very significant percent. I'm wanting to say 30%, but that seems large, so I can hardly believe it myself, but I'd have to double check it. But the reason being that the farmers are motivated to plant more crops because they know they're going to be able to get their crops to market, and so they plant more, and so their income goes up because now instead of facing, oh, if there's a harvest and there's a lot of rain and then I can't get my crop and it all goes to waste, and so this certainty of getting their crops to market has really done a lot to raise the income of the communities. So that's been the biggest benefit, which was not actually anticipated as being the biggest benefit. But it's also, of course, saving lives because these communities were facing, you question, do I send my kid to school today because do I know if he can actually get home at the end of the day? So I don't send them to school. So then they're not getting their education. It's like a whole cycle of problems caused by rural isolation.
Yeah, it truly is a wonderful organization. So I'd encourage everybody, if you haven't been involved or have a chapter at your university, do get online and take a look at Bridges to Prosperity or Engineers in Action as well. Chapters building bridges as well. So let's see. Julia Buckley is asking, what is the best advice for someone entering the industry?
My best advice is do enter the industry. And this is an industry that's really looking for people. They talk all the time about how they need people. They need people there. Workforce, if we're going with the threes. It's very, very big on everyone's radar. So the tip for getting in, though, is I think, though, you need to, of course, get your foundations, get your essentials, get your, your degree in engineering or construction management, construction technology, any of the above. They all have, possible good career paths. But also think about your passion. What do you care about? What are you passionate about? What can you really throw yourself into because you care? And I think that's going to show if you see that, I care about, if it was Bridges to Prosperity, or if it was the construction, where architects get together and build things out of cans and then donate the cans to the hungry. Something that, and I heard, I'll actually repeat, I don't know if you all were on, I forget which of the previous speakers talked about differentiating yourself. So if there's something special about your background and about your activities and something memorable. So think about what can you do that you really like to do. Do something that you care about. And then it gives you something to talk about when you're doing the interviews.
Great. Thanks, Jen. Let's have a question here. Trevor read your bio, that you've traveled a lot with outstanding projects and working internationally. So he was wondering, what differences do you see between the approach to project management abroad versus domestically here in the U.S.?
Well, I'll focus in on my most recent trip to India. And that was a big subject of discussion there because although India is just booming, there are a lot of trends that are leading India to become, in fact, we had an economist at the conference that talked about India over the next 15 years overtaking Japan as the world's third largest construction market. And the rise of the middle class, and other factors are, of course, and their infrastructure is really in need of, we think ours is bad. Theirs is even more more in need of repair and upgrade and building out the road network for the country. But they also face problems such as contracts, getting any dispute resolution. It can be a generational matter here, where you might take you 24 months or maybe 30 months to resolve some kind of dispute. There could be a dozen years before the dispute is resolved. And one of the international firms working there said, this is a woman who was managing the firm's activities in India, and she said it just became a chase for trying to get paid. Getting paid was just extremely difficult. So, these are challenges that they are facing in India, and they, here, one of the India-based speakers from one of their very big companies in India said that, he said, we would like to, they work outside India and they try to bring back best practices, but they said it's just still an uphill battle. And they'd like to even have more competition, but it's difficult, very difficult. So I think it's challenging from different countries, different problems.
Great.
Big question. That's a big question.
Good question. Well, I'm going to ask you another kind of broad question from Martin O'Connell. A number of people have asked about your experience with trends. I know you've seen a lot of industry trends in your career, keeping up with the industry each week. So Martin asks, how do you see the construction changing over the next 10 years? So looking into your crystal ball and the things you've seen, how do you see it changing the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think, I think the biggest thing I can point to is what I already spoke a little bit about, is the increasing pace of technological change. Things are changing so fast. It's going to be hard to predict what could happen in 10 years. I mean, will we have, what are the changes that could come with automated vehicles, autonomous vehicles, automated and autonomous vehicles? Will there be a time when and I don't know that it's 10 years, but will there be a time when the people who design roads and bridges will not be designing roads and bridges. They'll be designing like landing pads into buildings for all the air cars. Are we really going to have a Jetson situation in 25 or 50 years, where if we have drones that can, pick up your personal pod and take you where you're going, will we really need the kinds of highways, and you'll need drone ports. So it sounds science fiction-y, but so we're cell phones and things that we accept as very commonplace now. The internet, I mean, who would have imagined how that has changed our lives?
So I'm going to change direction a little bit, but there's kind of a theme here. You being our first female speaker here. Emily Kendall is asking, what's it like being a female in a typically male-dominated field? Do you think it's gotten better over the years?
I do think it's gotten better. I remember being in the first time I went to a society, I don't know, it was mechanical engineers, the Society of American, wait a minute. I'm struggling with the name of the Mechanical Engineering Society, but maybe it was it might have been an ASHRAE meeting. And that's, air conditioning, refrigerating, that crowd.
Yep.
And I looked around and I realized I was the only woman. I looked and looked. I was the only woman. There were like 500 people in that room. I was the only woman. That was probably, I'm going to tell you how old I am, how long I've been doing this. That was probably 1977 or 1978. I'd been in I was a cub reporter, started in 1976. So, but I do think, I mean, now I can't remember going to any meeting anywhere where there weren't a lot, you know, a significant number of women at the Society of American Military Engineers, and certainly the women in the military. There's women, you know, women in construction is, and you know, the numbers are still small relatively small in the field, although they're edging up a little bit. Just recently out on the West Coast, Women Build Nations Conference of Women in the Trades had 20,000 women attended that. That's a big, big group. So, so I do think there have been changes, and I do think they're positive, and I do think that it's a growing thing, so that as the more women that are seen, it's like you have the women mentors, you have the examples of women. It's not, I mean, there's still problems. I don't have that story at my fingertips, but we just did a story about sexual harassment and the Me Too movement and how it's affecting construction and women. We did a survey and women reported that, yes, they do experience it. And, you know, it's whether it be, off-color jokes that are offensive or whatever, they do experience it, and that's still, it's not that it's not a problem, it's still a problem. But the women are there. It wouldn't be a problem if there weren't any women there. So there are women there now. And maybe that's, you know, why the problem seems more acute, because the numbers of women are growing, and they're taught the Me Too thing. It's like, we're not going to take it anymore. We're going to stand up for ourselves and say no. So I think that all of this is leading to women finding their place and doing lots of great work in the industry, which badly needs all the people it can get of all kinds. It's not just women, it's diversity. It's all kinds of diversity, racial diversity, geographical diversity, national diversity, you know, heritage diversity, age diversity. So
great.
We need a diverse workforce.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I completely echo your sentiments as well. And I guess I would just also ask our students here to be making the change. We're very lucky here at the University of Colorado. Our AGC chapter, our Associated General Contractors chapter, all of the leadership is women this year.
Oh, that's right.
In leadership positions here, and also 60% of the leadership in our Bridges to Prosperity chapter is women. We keep seeing more and more women engineers entering the field. So I think it's an exciting time of change. But great question. Talking about some other big issues here, Jordan Hoffman wanted to know, how is the construction industry dealing with addressing climate change? So have you been seeing, writing about articles and seeing issues of climate change being addressed by the construction industry?
We've been writing about it a lot, and yes, there's a lot going on. There's a lot more that needs to go on, and we recently wrote an editorial about, it's time for the industry to do more, because the climate change deniers, there's just too much factual evidence now to try to ignore it. We just have to deal with it. We have to address it. It's real problems, and now's the time to do something. And people are doing things. That was another thing that we wrote a story about sea level rise around the country. We went around, we had reporters around the coast of the United States, from Boston all the way down through Florida, around Texas, and up the West Coast to Seattle. And we wrote about what different communities are doing along the coast to address sea level change, from big programs like Miami spending $100 million to raise the roadways, to many smaller programs all in other communities. And it was almost, we felt like we were, seeing the handwriting on the wall, because right after that came the big storms of Maria and Irma, and I'm getting all the names of which year, which storm hit in which year, because there's been so many storms over the last few years. This increasing pace of really tough weather activity and storm surge, and another thing I'd like to point out and keep reminding everyone is that the National Institute of Building Sciences study that really carefully took it all apart and analyzed it and found that in most categories, if you average the categories, you spend $1 of prevention can reap $6 can be saved in having to repair things after the disasters. So they really did a careful appraisal of it and found that it totally makes financial sense. So building in resiliency, very, very important.
Yes, yeah, very important. Jan, I hate to say it, but we're about wrapping up with our time. So let me ask you one more question, and then I'll give you a few minutes just to close with any final thoughts. But Jeffrey Figley is asking, in your opinion, what are some challenges the construction industry is still facing today?
Still facing? Well, they are, we all have to learn to get along. There's a lot of conflict, and maybe this is beyond the construction industry. There's a lot of conflict in in our United States society, and so the ability, and I think that some of the other speakers talked about design build and integrated project delivery, and how to keep. I'm thinking back to previous webinars, which I hope the students have a chance to watch if they can, because they really got into so many great topics. But dispute resolution, how to work together effectively, get projects done on time and on budget. We need to. It's not 100% there yet. We need to find ways to work together and for the common goals.
So more so than the technological challenges.
I think that the contractual challenges, keeping everybody, balancing risks between the parties, and making sure the person that can control the risk is the one that's bearing the risk, and keeping our projects on an even keel, and having a good reputation, building the reputation of the industry. Those are even more challenging. There are plenty of technical challenges, but even more challenging are the contractual and social and business relationship challenges.
Wonderful. Well, Jan, I just can't thank you enough for sharing your wisdom and your thoughts from across your career here working with Engineering News Record, and especially for your enthusiasm and all of the answers that you've given us. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, I'd just like to. I wish I could see all of you students. I wish there was like a little panel of where everybody's picture was there, so that I could see everyone, and it's just so important for us to communicate and to put the hand out to the next generation and figure out who you are and how we can talk you into getting engaged with this industry. I mean, I think sometimes you may feel like, you're out there knocking on doors trying to get a job, and at the same time, the industry, the companies in the industry are out there going, we need people, people. So to make that match up and get everybody together and get you all you young people who want to participate in the industry to make those matches, and it's great. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope I hope you'll attend more of these kinds of sessions and watch them, and I hope it's useful for you.
Well, Jan, I'm lucky enough in my position to get to work with our students every day, and I tell you, our future is really bright. We have some incredible young students who are going to make a big change in the industry, and I think the insights you provided today will be really helpful for that. So I do need to wrap up, and I know there's a number of people who are waiting to hear this, but we have a winner for our $500 scholarship from the National Academy of Construction, and that is Win Lee from Arizona State University. So we will be in contact to get you your $500 scholarship. Everybody else, we really do appreciate all of the questions, some wonderful, thoughtful questions here, and we will
just tell us how do you pick the winner?
It's random. We go through and make sure everybody's put in questions, and then again look through there. So thank you all for your attendance. We really do appreciate it. We will be doing this again in the spring, and so we will get out more information, and hopefully you'll join us in the spring, but we're all wrapped up for the fall. So I do want to thank Wayne Crew and the National Academy of Construction for sponsoring this and offering the scholarship. I want to thank Jan for her time and donating that time for doing this. I know East Coast, it's late in the day, so we really do appreciate it. And I also want to thank Jane Song, who's been managing all of this in the background and making it a success. So thank you all, and hope to see you in the spring.
Bye.